33ILL focus fully on storytelling voice. The stars beyond the border of the consortium's maps were supposed to be quiet. Empty sectors, charted and forgotten, drifting in the galactic current like dust on the tide. No records, no signals, no civilizations of note. Until now. They found Earth almost by accident. A patrol vessel, damaged and limping back through the void, intercepted a transmission. Static-riddled, pulsing at irregular frequencies, filled with sharp noises and strange languages. Curious, they traced it to a blue-green planet orbiting a mid-sized star. Initial surveys showed industry, power generation, atmospheric manipulation. Rudimentary by consortium standards, but astonishing for a world so young. Protocol demanded an inquiry. Files were opened. Probes were dispatched. Data was collected. Electromagnetic waves, cultural artifacts, snippets of digital archives encoded in the primitive language called English. The First Council convened to interpret the findings, expecting to catalog another minor species and move on. Instead, silence filled the chamber as the archives unfurled before them. Wars, hundreds of them, fought across continent. Weapons forged with the deliberate intent to kill not just one, but thousands at once. Cities razed. Genocides perpetrated with mechanical efficiency. Explosions that burned hotter than stars, unleashed by creatures barely out of their atmospheric cradle. Diseases engineered, spread, endured. Revolutions overthrew empires only to birth new tyrannies. From stone to iron to silicon, every step soaked in blood. It defied understanding. They replayed the timelines over and over, searching for errors. Surely no species could survive such relentless self-destruction. Surely evolution would have favored caution, empathy, restraint. Yet here humanity stood, breathing, building, reaching for the stars. The board convened again, analysts and historians from dozens of worlds sitting in grim-faced circles. Reports were presented with trembling voices. Visual footage taken from Earth's satellites showed mushroom clouds rising like angry gods. Fields of twisted iron where cities had once stood. Rivers choked with the bodies of the dead. Still, the humans pressed onward, rebuilding from the ashes with a determination that seemed less rational and more instinctual. Consensus was impossible. Some believed the data fabricated, an elaborate mythos crafted to terrify outsiders. Others saw the truth burning too brightly to ignore. They demanded deeper investigation. Was it possible that life could evolve not despite violence, but because of it? Analysis began at the genetic level. Humanity's DNA was a battlefield, scars of ancient plagues and evolutionary bottlenecks etched into every helix. Psychological profiles extracted from Earth's public records painted a species that could adapt to tragedy, learn from suffering, even find pride in survival against impossible odds. If the files were true, then humanity was not merely violent. They were violence given form and mind. Theories crumbled. Models predicting societal stability shattered under the weight of human history. The peaceful ascent of other consortium members, the slow spread of civilization across millennia, seemed almost quaint in comparison to the brutal sprint that had birthed humanity's modern age. Meetings stretched for days. Sleep was abandoned in favor of frantic discussion. The question loomed: if such a species had risen once, could it happen again elsewhere? Were humans a fluke, or a harbinger? In a desperate attempt to disprove the findings, they contacted the humans directly. No grand announcement, no formal greeting. Simple data exchanges, masked behind neutral probes. Questions were embedded in communications. How did your civilizations rise? What challenges shaped your people? The responses returned swiftly, without pretense. Stories of famine endured, wars fought, ideologies contested in bloody fields. Achievements were recounted not in spite of adversity, but because of it. Pride shimmered behind the cold facts. Humanity did not shy away from their past. They embraced it, refined it, wielded it as proof of their right to survive. Confusion deepened among the council. Other young civilizations, those rare few, spoke of peace as their highest virtue. Yet here were humans who spoke of endurance as theirs, no matter the cost. Further analysis revealed patterns that defied logic. While other species sought safety, humanity sought challenges. When stability was achieved, they invented new conflicts, economic, political, ideological, as if driven by some primal need to struggle. Psychologists theorized survival traits, evolutionary arms races among tribal ancestors. Yet that did not explain humanity's relentless escalation, the cold calculus that led to inventions capable of erasing all life, yet never deployed in self-annihilation. Not fully. Always on the edge, never stepping back, but never plunging over either. Dancing with their own extinction and mastering the rhythm. The board grew divided. Some proposed that human records be dismissed as unreliable. Surely, they argued, no intelligent race could endure such constant trauma without fracturing beyond repair. But evidence piled higher. Literature soaked in blood and tragedy, songs celebrating sacrifice, monuments to fallen warriors, entire cultures built on the myth of the lone struggler overcoming insurmountable odds. Language analysis yielded chilling discoveries. Concepts of heroism intrinsically tied to violence. Tales where conflict was not merely a backdrop, but the defining crucible. Victory rarely meant peace, it meant survival. Their scientists could scarcely comprehend it. In the consortium, conflict was an aberration, a virus to be excised. For humanity it was a forge. Debate shifted from disbelief to alarm. Some suggested a simple course: cut all ties. Quarantine Earth. Let the humans struggle alone until they exhausted themselves or evolved beyond their madness. Others warned that to ignore them was to invite disaster. If humanity turned outward with the same ferocity that marked their history, the consortium would not be ready. And so, reluctantly, they agreed on a plan. Contact would be made, disguised as trade and cultural exchange, but in reality a thorough investigation. Observers embedded among human populations, probes stationed in orbit, simulations constructed to predict humanity's future move. They needed to know, would humanity outgrow their history, or would history repeat itself on a galactic scale? The first probes activated quietly, camouflaged against the background radiation of Earth's cluttered orbital field. They recorded cities pulsing with energy, nations maneuvering across invisible lines, economies rising and collapsing, ideologies clashing in digital forums and shadowed streets. They watched humans organize relief efforts in disaster zones while simultaneously funding new weapons projects. They observed humanity's brightest minds devising cures for ancient diseases even as others plotted new ways to kill. Paradox stacked upon paradox, impossible to reconcile under standard models. Analysis teams began fragmenting under the strain. Some members, deeply embedded in human cultural studies, reported feelings of awe. They spoke of human art, passionate, raw, created often in the aftermath of tragedy, and wondered if violence was not humanity's shame, but their muse. Others saw only the. When the first disguised envoys arrived on Earth, they found a species in the midst of paradox. Humanity lived simultaneously in the ruins of its past and the dreams of its future. They stacked gleaming towers atop ancient battlegrounds. They wired artificial suns into their cities, while monuments to fallen empires crumbled at their feet. Everywhere the envoys looked, they saw conflict woven into progress, a relentless march forward powered by the memories of what had been lost. The observers blended into the background noise of Earth's countless surveillance systems, anonymous among billions of digital eyes. They watched as humans bickered, traded, fought, loved, invented, protested, and built, sometimes all within the same day. Patterns emerged quickly. Humans could not abide stasis. Where there was stability, they created competition. Where there was peace, they found new challenges. Every victory birthed new ambitions. The envoys had been instructed to look for threats, but what they found defied easy classification. Humanity's aggression was real, undeniable, but it was not mindless. It was focused, often creative, sometimes even compassionate in a brutal sort of way. They observed humans risk their lives to save strangers in disaster zones, while other humans plotted domination in corporate boardrooms and political arenas. There was no single narrative to follow, no unified purpose beyond the act of striving itself. To better understand, the consortium proposed a new tactic: simulations. They invited human volunteers, under the guise of harmless cultural exchanges, to participate in a series of hypothetical scenarios, historical recreations, cooperative problem-solving exercises, projected future crises. The goal was to observe human reactions under controlled conditions. The results shook the consortium to its core. When faced with simulated natural disasters, humans did not crumble. They organized with ferocious efficiency, delegating authority, improvising solutions, sacrificing personal comfort for collective survival. When dropped into economic collapse simulations, they rapidly constructed black markets, reinvented currencies, formed new alliances out of desperation and ambition. When war games were introduced, humanity truly revealed its core. Strategies emerged that no algorithm could predict. Humans leveraged deception, psychological manipulation, and rapid iteration in ways that stunned the observers. They adapted so quickly that every scenario designed to trap or corner them failed within hours. The most unsettling discovery came during peace simulations. Given a perfectly stable, cooperative environment, humans initially flourished. Productivity soared, cultural exchanges bloomed. But within weeks, divisions formed. New ideologies arose. Minor differences became battle lines. Without external threats, humans invented internal ones. Conflict was not a response to scarcity or fear. It was a natural byproduct of their intelligence, their need to struggle and define themselves against something. The observers returned their reports with trembling hands. These were not errors in simulation design. They were reflections of a deeper truth. Humanity needed challenge as fundamentally as they needed air or water. Deprived of it, they would create it. Analysis shifted from historical study to psychological excavation. Philosophers across the consortium tried to explain it. Some suggested humanity's unique evolutionary pressures, others proposed metaphysical theories about sentient beings requiring opposition to maintain identity. None could fully capture the terrifying elegance of humanity's paradox. They were builders and destroyers in the same breath. The consortium leaders demanded deeper evidence. They ordered a dive into humanity's own philosophies, the stories they told about themselves. Observers turned to human literature, music, cinema, oral traditions. What they found confirmed their worst fears. The heroes of human stories did not seek peace. They sought victory. They faced overwhelming odds, endured pain and betrayal, and triumphed not by avoiding conflict, but by embracing it. Their gods were warriors, explorers, rebels. Their saints were martyrs. Their philosophers wrestled with meaning in a universe they assumed would never offer easy answers. Where consortium species sought to master their environment and harmonize with it, humanity sought to transcend it, to tear it apart and rebuild it better, or die trying. Further cultural analysis unearthed deeply ingrained sayings: no pain, no gain. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Through hardship to the stars. These were not empty phrases. They were operating principles. One of the observers, a veteran analyst of emerging civilizations, wrote in his final report before resigning, "To a human, suffering is not a warning to stop. It is proof that they are on the right path." The consortium's internal debates grew more frantic. Should they contain humanity? Should they ban them from interstellar contact? Should they attempt to guide them, at the risk of igniting the very aggression they feared? While the consortium argued, humanity acted. In the absence of official alliances, human explorers launched private initiatives. They built crude but effective spacecraft designed for long-term habitation. They sent autonomous drones toward nearby stars, broadcasting greetings in every known human language, seeking contact not for conquest but for connection. Their messages were raw, filled with hope, tinged with the inevitable acknowledgement of their violent past. "We are not perfect," one transmission said. "But we are trying. And we are coming." Among themselves, consortium officials wondered if the humans even understood what they had revealed. Did they realize that their history was a warning as much as a testament? Or did they believe their resilience excused the bloodshed that paved their path to the stars? Some members argued that humanity's unique approach to survival was precisely what the galaxy needed. In a universe filled with entropy and decay, perhaps the humans, with all their stubborn defiance, would be a necessary force for renewal. Others warned that unleashing humanity on an unsuspecting galaxy would be the greatest mistake the consortium had ever made. In secret conclaves, risk assessments were recalculated. Models that had once assumed slow, predictable expansion from Earth now predicted aggressive growth. Colonies founded on hostile world. Terraforming projects driven not by necessity, but by the sheer human unwillingness to accept no for an answer. Economic systems evolving in ways no consortium culture had ever anticipated, fueled by human hunger for more, always more. Yet even as fear grew, so did fascination. The humans' willingness to confront the ugliest parts of themselves stood in stark contrast to the consortium's history of denial and suppression. Where the consortium had built peace by silencing conflict, humanity had built strength by surviving it. This resilience was most evident during interviews with human survivors of great tragedies, wars, genocides, collapses. They spoke not with bitterness, but with a strange reverence for what they had endured. They spoke of lessons learned, communities rebuilt, futures secured by those who refused to surrender even when all hope seemed lost. One particularly memorable testimony came from a human who had lived through the destruction of a major city. Asked how he had survived, he smiled sadly and said, "We helped each other." The meeting was inevitable. Across the consortium's vast network, every channel buzzed with preparations. Species that had once believed themselves ancient masters of diplomacy now scrambled to craft an approach worthy of humanity's impossible nature. Delegates reviewed every historical incident where humanity had surprised, overwhelmed, or redefined expectations, yet the records offered little comfort. If humanity chose war, they would not fight predictably. If they chose peace, it would be a peace forged in fire, not gifted in trust. The Council convened on neutral ground, a drifting station constructed between consortium space and Earth's expanding frontier. Every precaution was taken. Shields, escape contingencies, diplomatic redundancies. Yet none could shake the sense that they were walking into negotiations not as patrons guiding a new species, but as students summoned to a reckoning. The humans arrived without ceremony. No grand fleets, no posturing. A single vessel, functional, scarred from previous missions, brimming with the unmistakable marks of adaptation and human stubbornness. Their representatives disembarked calmly, dressed not in ornate uniforms but in practical gear, the kind worn by explorers and builders rather than conquerors. The first words they spoke were simple: "We're ready to be part of something bigger. If you are." The consortium's delegation exchanged uneasy glances. Ready. Not asking permission, not seeking approval, declaring readiness. An implicit statement of equality before any negotiations even began. Humanity had already decided their place. The only question was whether the consortium would recognize it. Formalities commenced. Diplomatic protocols were observed with clinical precision. Introductions, translations, acknowledgement. Yet beneath the veneer of politeness, the real conversations happened in silences, in measured glances, in the subtle flexing of authority that humanity neither yielded to nor contested. They accepted no superiority, offered no false humility. The human negotiators spoke plainly. They understood the fears. They acknowledged the records of their history, the legacy of violence and triumph. They made no excuses. Instead, they offered proof of growth. International accords forged after centuries of war, global cooperation built not on homogeneity but on managed difference, crisis after crisis faced and survived without collapsing into extinction. "We are not who we were," one human said. "But we carry who we were with us. Always." A few consortium members pressed for assurances. Would humanity accept limits on expansion? Would they agree to restrictions on military development? Would they bind themselves to consortium norms and cultural expectations? The humans listened patiently, then answered equally patiently but without compromise. "We believe in cooperation. We believe in respect. But we will not amputate parts of ourselves to fit someone else's idea of peace. We will not promise to never change, never strive, never push. That's not who we are." Tension rippled through the assembly. The consortium had expected concessions. They had not expected honesty so sharp it cut through every polite fiction they had prepared. The debate shifted. Some factions argued for immediate integration. Humanity's dynamism could revitalize stagnant consortium systems. Others insisted humanity must be contained or at least delayed until further studies could be conducted. Throughout it all, humanity waited. They did not plead. They did not threaten. They simply made it clear that they were moving forward, with or without approval. The real pivot came when human scientists offered a gift. Shared research, technology designed not for war or conquest but for exploration and survival. Innovations born from necessity, not greed. Medical advances derived from battlefield triage. Energy solutions engineered during times of scarcity. Communications protocols adapted to withstand planetary disasters. It was a message louder than any speech. We don't just survive hardship. We grow from it. And we bring our strength with us. Faced with this undeniable utility, opposition within the consortium fractured. Younger species, ambitious and restless, clamored for access to human method. Even elder races, weary after millennia of slow decline, could not entirely resist the allure of humanity's relentless vitality. The vote was held. Narrowly, humanity was admitted as a provisional member of the consortium. Celebrations erupted across human networks. For many, it was proof that Earth's long, bloody history had not been a chain around their necks, but a foundation beneath their feet. But among the consortium's leadership, celebration was muted. They understood what had been unleashed. Humanity would not be content with token inclusion. They would learn, adapt, innovate. They would challenge every unexamined assumption, every tradition ossified into dogma. Already, human delegates were requesting access to restricted archives, proposing revisions to outdated treaties, suggesting new trade routes through previously abandoned sectors. Where other species hesitated, humans pushed. Within months, human influence began to ripple outward. Technologies shared tentatively at first were rapidly improved upon. Stagnant industries found new life. Political alliances once brittle and ceremonial gained new purpose, strengthened by human pragmatism and idealism in equal measure. Not everyone welcomed the change. In some sectors, resistance hardened into resentment. Secret councils whispered of contingencies. What if humanity's ambition grew unchecked? What if their hunger for challenge turned outward once again? Plans were drafted. Fail-safes designed. Containment protocols updated. Yet even as these precautions took form, their architects knew the truth. Containment was a fantasy. Humanity had already proven that walls only sharpened their resolve. The galaxy was learning a lesson Earth had long known. You cannot fence in a species that builds ladders out of ruin. Humanity's expansion was not conquest in the traditional sense. They did not raise armies to subjugate. They raised banners of opportunity, and those who hungered for change flocked to them willingly. New colonies were founded on barren rocks and gas giants. Terraforming projects commenced in places the consortium had deemed unworthy. Trade hubs blossomed where others saw only danger. Human culture spread not by edict but by example. Music, philosophy, innovation, all seeded into the stars, carried by those who had finally been given the chance to chase their ambitions without apology. Some old powers tried to resist. Economic sanctions, political pressure, covert sabotage. But every obstacle humanity faced became another story of triumph, another chapter in a narrative that made them not feared tyrants, but admired survivors. Even their adversaries could not deny it. When humanity was knocked down, they rose stronger. When they were betrayed, they rebuilt trust elsewhere. When they were attacked, they learned, adapted, overcame. The greatest shift, however, was ideological. For centuries, the consortium had maintained a philosophy of equilibrium. Progress measured in cautious increments, stability prized above dynamism. Humanity shattered that complacency. They dared to dream of more, to imagine not just survival but greatness, and in doing so, they reignited a fire that many had thought forever extinguished. Young species, once